welcome to One on One with Mitch, Lafon. And joining me on this episode, it is legendary Cream drummer Ginger Baker's son, Kofi Baker. We talk about his time working with Uli Jon Roth, Steve Marriott, and a lot more. Before checking that out, please check me out on Twitter at Mitch Lafon and head over to TalkingMetal.com for all my interviews. And with that, here is the one, the only, Kofi Baker. We are speaking with drummer Kofi Baker, son, of course, of Ginger Baker of Cream. A pleasure to speak with you.
Yes, thank you. And I had nothing to do with it. It wasn't my fault.
Yeah, so let's talk about all that wonderful stuff. But let's start right from the beginning. You've got some tour dates down the road with the Kofi Baker Cream experience. How did that all come about, just first of all, setting up the Cream experience?
Well, I was actually on the drum stall at the farewell concert of Cream in 1969, or 1968, sorry, because I was born 9 months after the last concert they did. So I worked out that I was actually there. So I figured at some point I'm going to have to play the music of my dad's as I was there at the farewell concert. So I went to the reunion in 2005 and saw them playing, and never really got into Cream that much. Like the jamming side of it, because I was always brought up in jazz and that kind of stuff, the improvisation. I just saw them playing. I thought there's a lot of improvisation here. There's a lot of space for doing your own thing. So I started playing it, and I really enjoy it because like I said, you can really do your own thing in it. You can actually, it's like playing original music, because people ask me, do you play originals? And I'm like, well, we just did a 10-minute original jam that no one's ever done before. So
right.
That's what I liked about it. I like the fact that, you can play the song that people know, but then you can do your own thing. You can improvise. That's a great thing about jazz. You can do jazz covers, but every time you do a jazz cover, it's different. It's not like covering a pop song where it's, it's the pop song and you're done.
Talk to me about that in terms of the experience. So how sort of true to what Cream does? Because, obviously when you're off jamming, it becomes sort of this original piece, but fans coming, are they expecting that, or do they really want to hear, hey, I want to hear that song like I remember it on the album from 1960, whatever? What is sort of...
Well, the thing is, Cream live was very different than Cream in the studio. Cream never played the same twice live. If you listen to the live stuff, it's nothing like the albums. It's absolutely nothing like it. It's different speeds, different arrangements. So I do the live thing. We play Cream the way Cream would play live, and the way Cream would play live now. So it's because Cream was different in 2005 in the reunion than it was in 68 when they were, doing all their gigs. And my dad was like, he never played the same twice, and the music evolved. That was the thing about Cream. It was the first jam band. So, we play the songs, the actual songs exactly like they were done. But when we go into the jams, the jam parts are pretty much our own. We hit on the key stuff. We start the jams the same way Cream started the jams, but then we go off and do whatever we want to do. Like Cream did. Cream played gigs where they only played 3 songs, and they played like 2 hours because they just went off into these tangents. So that's kind of what we do. We do Cream the way it was being done back in those days. And the jam band thing is really big nowadays. So that's kind of like we're doing the original jam band stuff. How the jam bands all started from that. So that's how we do it. We do it, it's different every night. It's completely different every night. The songs are the same. The actual songs, well, they change a little bit as well because, I don't play the same way twice as well as my dad because he made sure I didn't. It's the jazz way of doing stuff. So, that's...
and I think that's what makes it exciting because, I've go to 100 shows a year, and I see a lot of bands these days playing to backing tapes, and they're playing the same set list for the last 15 years, and it becomes very, very frustrating. So it's nice to have a band like yours that's actually playing and providing something. Let me ask you some questions here quickly about you vis-a-vis your dad, when you're the son of sort of one of these famous rock stars, whether you're Julian Lennon or you, or Jason Bonham, how does that affect you both positively and negatively? On one hand, it must open doors. People are like, it's he's a Baker, and on the other hand, they might say, oh, well, he's. How have you found that experience?
Well, my dad wasn't the most liked person in the music business.
Right.
So it's closed more doors than opened them. I mean, the only doors that have opened for me have been doors because I've been playing drums my whole life in clubs, and like Steve Marriott, Humble Pie. I joined his band because his manager saw me playing in a little bar. Didn't even know who I was, just saw me playing in a little bar in London and said, I really like that drummer. Steve's looking for a drummer, and came up to me and said, would you do it? And I said, I don't know who Steve Marriott is, but yeah, sure, if it's a good gig. And I met Steve and we got on well, and off, I went on the road with him. So that was a door that opened just for me playing around. Eric Burden from the Animals, he was looking for a drummer. He was actually going to replace his whole band, and I was put up for the gig. And without even asking or anything, he said, oh, yeah, if he's anything like his dad, I want nothing to do with him. So it's closed, it's actually closed more doors than I think it's opened, to be honest with you. And especially, I never did the Cream stuff until 2005. I was always playing jazz. So it didn't really affect me because I never really used my dad's name. I was always just playing, either original music or jazz or stuff like that. It wasn't until I've been playing the Cream stuff that it's actually started to affect me in a way of like, oh, you're Ginger Baker's son, and some people say, well, why don't you do your own stuff? And I go, well, I do. Most of the jamming is, and I do my own stuff, and I have done my own albums, but I like playing the Cream stuff. It's really fun. It's so I mean it's a double-edged sword. It's probably, like you said, it's probably opened a few doors because people say, oh, Ginger Baker's son, but it's closed as many. And people kind of judge you. They think you're rich. They think you've been brought up and I haven't. If you watch the documentary, you can see that my dad's blown all his money, and I grew up in a very poor time. I've been basically living hand to mouth, gig to gig, my whole life. That's sorry.
Well, which is remarkable to think. Let me just pick up on one thing you said when Steve Marriott approached you or his management and says, "Hey, we like what we're seeing here. Come drum for us," and you don't have an idea who he is. You're sort of oblivious to who this guy is. As you play with him and tour with him, talk to me a little bit about the appreciation, because you look at Paul Stanley of Kiss and Ozzy Osbourne of Black Sabbath. They've all said that he's one of the greatest singers ever, and of course Kevin DuBrow of Quiet Riot as well. What did you learn from Steve? And after, of course, you've toured with him, did you sort of go, oh, okay, I get who this guy is now, right?
Well, no, because I was so young at the time, I never really knew Humble Pie. I just knew he was a great musician, and he took me on he was like my dad for a while. I mean, he really took me in because I was pretty much just got back from being homeless at the time. I was, very young. So he kind of took me in, and he was just a great guy. I was really shocked when he died. I was really upset. Because he died the day before we were meant to go on the road Saturday, and he died Friday night.
Right.
So he died before my second going out on the European tour of him. I toured with him Europe, and I toured with him around England. And I played with him for just over a year, and then I left his band to become to do original stuff, and then it didn't kind of work out, so I rejoined his band. But Steve was just such a great guy. I mean, he was pretty out there. I mean, in Germany, he got a cork from a wine bottle, lit it so it was all charcoaly, and gave everybody a Hitler moustache, and made us all walk around going Sieg Heil in Germany, which wasn't
a very wise thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, everybody kind of took it the right way, which was good, because he's Steve Marriott. I mean, I got a picture of Steve hanging out of a window in Germany with his finger across his the Hitler moustache, and his other hand doing the Heil Hitler thing. So that was Steve. I mean, he was just a bit out there, but he was one of the coolest guys. I mean, he he was great. I mean, I didn't know who he was the whole time I was really working with him. It wasn't until later on that I realized, what a big impact he was. I mean, I just liked playing with his music and just liked him. I mean, I've done that with a lot of people, worked with a lot of people. I had no idea who they were. Uli Jon Roth. I had no really idea who Uli Jon Roth was until I started working with him.
Well, and it's great that you mentioned that because, in fact, just yesterday, Uli and I were exchanging emails. I love Uli. I think he's absolutely one of the best guitarists ever. I was going to ask you about that. So let's tell me about touring with him, and what do you take away, and what do you learn from a guy like Uli?
Well, Uli, I first played with Uli doing the Cream stuff. And he came in with me when we did this thing called the Extreme Cream, where I was playing with a lot of guitar players from Frank Zappa, Mike Keneally, who played with me from Frank Zappa, bunch of like really good guitar players. And Uli came in and played with me, and it was really good. So then Uli was doing a tour of America, and he couldn't really afford to get visas for his drummer and everything. So he asked me to do it, and I was kind of put up for the gig, and I was like, okay, I'll learn the Scorpion stuff, I'll learn it. And didn't realize that it's a whole different thing than the Cream stuff. It's for a drummer, it's very simple, very, very simple. And I'm not used to playing quite that simple. I mean, Steve Marriott always say, play simple, keep it simple, Baker. And I did as best I could, but he gave me a lot of freedom. He gave me a whole drum solo in the set, and see, Uli didn't. Uli was like I need you to play German drumming. You have to be a German drummer. Dot, 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 very staccato, very precise, no fluffiness. And I'm a jazz player, so it didn't really work out. I mean, it worked out when we were doing the Cream stuff, but when I did his band, it didn't really work out. I was too much, like Uli said, I'm too much of a player. And I was kind of got really frustrated with it, and it kind of tells. So I only did one tour with his band, and that was it. He got a different drummer to do his last tour, a more bish bash kind of drummer, because that's what he needs. So really, he's a great guy again, really nice guy. He's actually got a little bit of sense of humor for a German, which is cool. But again, playing that kind of music, because it's all about the guitar. I mean, he needed me to just be back there and play this part so he could do his thing. And I'm not like that. When I'm playing music, I'm a part of it. I want to be in with the improvisation and doing that kind of stuff. So that was the thing with Uli. It didn't kind of pan out for doing his Scorpion stuff. Good guy.
Yeah, great guy, and I love the Scorpions. You mentioned original music a couple of times. There was a while back with Chris Poland of Megadeth, formerly of Megadeth. Okay. You were an Ohm.
Right.
Well, just by your reaction, doesn't sound like you had a great time. But
I mean, Chris was great, but it was like. It started to become, why are we playing like this? The songs are so complex. I mean, you had like one song that was 3.5 minutes long, and it had more information in it than an entire 2.5 hour set of a normal band in the one song. So it was really complex. I mean, you're playing 15, 16th notes in a bar and weird time signatures. And so it was really good in terms of challenging, but it got to the point for me. I mean, I did 10 years with that band. Baked potato and everything. I mean, the funny thing was I left. I joined the band because the drummer they had for Ohm was got into drugs or something, and I think coke or something or speed, and couldn't really pull the gig off. So I jumped in. I did 10 years with the band on and off. I pulled out a few times, but then they got when I left, they got the original drummer back in again. And he lasted, I think, 6 months, had a heart attack and died. And it was like, wow. Then they got me back in again. So I did the band for a little bit. And then I left the band again and said, I can't really do it. And then they got Mick Menza or something from Megadeth.
Mick Menza.
Back in.
Right.
And he lasted, 6 months and then had a heart attack and died. So then they asked me to do it again. I was like, I don't know about that. But, I mean, it was fun working with Chris, but he was a little bit too a little bit too high stress for me. I mean, it's very stressful, the rehearsals. It was always, running over the material over and over again, trying to get it right because it was really complex. So it was a lot of thinking. That's why when I got to playing the Cream stuff again, it was like, I can just sit back and play the drums again. I don't have to think about every bar that I'm playing. And with Chris, it was very heavy. Again, same with Uli, very heavy. I'm not really a heavy metal drummer. I mean, I can do it, but I tend to last a song or two and then start to want to be more jazzy again. So it was, it was okay. It was, and Ohm was a cross between metal and jazz. It was, a fusion band, but they were still on a very heavy end of it. I like playing quiet sometimes and coming down and jamming. There wasn't much improvisation in Ohm. It was very, very worked out. It was very complex. So, I mean, I liked it at the time. I've just changed a lot as I've got older. I've got more into playing music for the fun of it rather than, how complicated and how, what I can do. Look, I can do this and I can do this. So that was kind of Ohm. Ohm was very much everybody sat down in a baked potato or wherever we played, and they all sat down and watched. It wasn't, no one was dancing to Ohm music. And I kind of like the thing with Cream is people get up and dance and they get into it. I kind of like that.
Yeah, that's sort of the experience I like when you go to a show, is that you sort of get into the music and you move around and you bang your head or whatever you do.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not one of those musos that can just sit there and go that
right,
doesn't
exactly.
work for me. Which as a Canadian, it's weird to say, but I just can't get into Rush. I think Rush, you just sort of sit there and go in terms of future plans and recording new music just recording new music. Do you get into the studio with the Cream experience and record some kind of new music under that banner? Or are you looking for another project? Where do we go from here?
Well, nowadays, everybody has a studio in their house. It's not like it used to be. So you don't have to pack your drums up and go to a studio. Pretty much everything is done through email. So I'm doing new music all the time. I do session work. I've got my own album that's sitting there that I haven't finished yet because I have to get. I play keyboards, so I write as well. Same as my dad. People don't know my dad played keyboards too and wrote musically as well. So I write stuff, but I like to have the other musicians come in and fill it in. So I've done several of my own albums. There's an album out there called Tapestry, which has got Rick Fiobracci on bass and Brett Garsted on guitar. Rick Fiobracci's now with Blood, Sweat and Tears. He did Yanni and all kinds of people. But Chick Corea's Electric Band, he played with them as well. So it's kind of a fusion album. That one's already out. That's out doing stuff. There's a lot of original stuff. Abstract Logic with Jonas Hellborg from the Malvishnu Orchestra and Sean Lane on guitar. That was an original album that I did where I wrote some of the music in it. So there's a lot of stuff of my original stuff out there. I'm always doing that. I'm always playing original stuff and writing it. So not so much with the Cream thing because people really, that come to that want to see and hear Cream. They don't really want to hear originals, I don't think. But I'm thinking of putting some in. I mean, occasionally with the guy I play with, Chris Shutters, we write together. So we're thinking about, maybe popping in. We do occasionally pop in an original song here and there, but not so much with the Cream stuff. It tends to be, I play with Chris in his band as well, and then we do originals. And we play some Cream as well because of me. But with the Cream experience, when people are coming to see that, it's pretty much Cream stuff. There's not much originals in it.
Okay, so you wouldn't record under that banner. Let me ask you this then, because we've mentioned your father a couple of times. How was it growing up in sort of a rock and roll household? Was it, all fun and stuff like people imagine, or was it like, Jesus, he's never home and I don't have a dad here going on? What kind of experience did you have?
Well, yeah, my dad was never around. I mean, he was around at the very beginning. But it was, it was a weird life because I grew up in the end. I grew up in a kind of tailspin of the destruction because I was born in '69, so I was born in the height of his career, just after Blind Faith. And so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those first 5 years of my life was like, very nice. I remember I had a, electric car that I used to drive around, it was like, all the stuff you ever wanted you could have. And then about 6, 7 years old, things started to completely change. By the time I was about 8 or 9, we had no hot water in the house. By the time I was like, 13, 14, I was living on the streets. So it went from one thing to completely the other. Growing up in that house was pretty amazing. Every wall was a different color. There was gold albums all over the walls, which I thought was normal. I thought when you went to some other people's houses, like, why don't you have these records on your walls? And why are your walls all white? Every wall in our house is a different color. And a lot of drugs going on, obviously. But the first few years, I remember, was like pretty, big parties. I remember parties and lots of drugs. And, I was obviously sent to bed. And I remember going to bed and then having big firework parties and big parties going on all night. But that ended by the time I was about 5 or 6, I think. And it ended kind of abruptly.
Right. Let me ask you about, because you mentioned that by 13, 14, you're out on the street. Is that something that you hold an anger towards your father? I mean, was it mostly the money spent on drugs and a lavish lifestyle just with no foresight of, how to save?
Well, I mean, if you've watched the documentary, it kind of explains it.
Right.
It's really, he lost his money through one thing only, and that was polo. Because you have to have 25 to 30 horses, and they have to be pedigree polo horses. And it's a lot of money to keep up. Polo is a sport for the rich and famous.
Right.
But my dad, he was kind of stupid because he made all this money and then stopped making the money and just spent it, and didn't have any coming in, and would just spend. Didn't invest. Wasn't the kind of guy that would invest his money. Just was the kind of guy that's like, oh, I got a bunch of money, let me spend it. He spent all his money really quickly, and stopped paying, for all the stuff, the taxes and everything. He's never really been good for paying taxes. So he basically ran up a big bill, and they just took the house. That was kind of, the whole thing that happened with that. So he lost all his money. Recently, the 2005, he made like $5 million, and now he's totally broke again. So, and he says, Kofi, I should be on a desert island sipping Bacardi and Cokes. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, I should be sitting right next to you. It's like you didn't have to screw it up for everybody. But, that's just my dad. He just doesn't think about the future. He thinks he's going to die tomorrow. So let's spend everything today. That's just his attitude, Now he's got some wife that spends all his money for him. He's got some kind of deal with her, I think, that's she looks after him and he pays for everything with her. So, that's just how he does it, which is, again, kind of a shame because he's never really been around as a dad for me. And it's like I was saying to my girlfriend the other day, I was saying it's such a shame because I'm a drummer and he's a drummer. We could have such a great, relationship. But, I don't know what my dad's deal is. I really don't. I just don't think he ever wanted me to be a drummer. I think maybe he wants to leave the legend of Ginger Baker, the greatest drummer out there, and leave it at that, not have anybody's son come in and go, oh, he's got a son that plays. So I think that's the only thing I can think of that makes sense with why he doesn't really want to play drums with me.
Yeah, which is weird.
At first he did.
Well, I'm just listening to it from a fan's perspective. What could be greater than you two guys going on some kind of tour where there's the son and the father and they both do the creams? There's possibilities to monetize it, and it's like, well, why would you not want to do that, right?
When I was like 14 years old, right before the first time we got evicted from the house, we got thrown out, and I broke back into the house, so we squatted our own house, and then while we were squatting our own house, I went to Italy to see my dad, and he was like had no money then, so we did a concert together with me and him playing drums, and it was great. We worked out this stuff together, and we played together. I mean, he basically taught me a lot of the stuff I play. So it was a great thing. We played together. We did this whole thing, and it was really great. And we did it a few other times in Colorado. There's actually a video where we did it in Colorado, and it was really good fun. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's. I got a little bit more technical player than him. You know, I practiced obviously more, and I learned everything he taught me, and then I took it to the next step. I mean, a lot of people that come see me play, you know, they say, "Oh, you know, but you are better than your dad," you know, and I like maybe technically better than my dad, but that's not, you know, it's not about how technically you can play. It's really about how, you know, what you do with it. So, and I love my dad's playing, and I'd love to play with him. And you know, when I play with him, I don't do all my over technical Terry Bozzio, Vinnie Caluta chops. I keep it down to, you know, the stuff that he likes. And we had a great time, but I don't know. I don't know if it's him or his wife right now that's stopping us playing together. I got a suspicion it's his wife that he's got right now, because she doesn't like any of the family. She just wants, you know, from what I can understand, she just wants to get the money from my dad, and that's it. He says otherwise, but you know, it's either one or two things. Either my dad doesn't want to see me anymore, or his wife is making it that way. And it's kind of sad because, you know, me and my sister was over here, and we're like, you know, it's so sad that my dad's like, now he's got this wife, and this wife's got a kid, and all he talks about is her and his kid, that kid, you know, how wonderful the kid is and everything. And me and my sister was like, well, you know, we're your family too, you know, but he doesn't seem to, you know, care about us anymore. So we've kind of like, you know, I don't really talk to him anymore. My sisters don't really talk to him anymore. We don't really have a relationship with him anymore, which is a shame, because he says he's got a new family, and that's his new family. So, you know, that's the way it is. That's the way we've got to look at it now. So I just do the Cream stuff to keep the whole, really more keep the music going. And I love playing it, you know, and keep that kind of side of my dad's, you know, legacy alive, I suppose.
Which sort of, in a sense, must be bittersweet, because here you are keeping his legacy alive, and in a sense, he wants to have it to himself, kind of thing. But let's just talk about his health. He had heart issues.
Yeah, I mean, he had a heart bypass or something. You see, again, I don't really know. I talked to him a little bit after the operation, and he seemed fine. You know, again, it's like with my dad, it's hard to get any kind of a big conversation out of him. I mean, you've probably seen the documentary and seen some interviews with him. He's not the most talkative person to get stuff out of. I mean, Jay really had to work hard in that documentary to get what he got out of him, which is pretty amazing. So he doesn't really talk a lot, but I mean, I think he's doing okay. I mean, I think, you know, he had that heart thing. I mean, he seems to like just be able to bounce back from everything. I mean, he does eat pretty well. He has a good diet, so that's probably got a lot to do with it. But I mean, he smoked cigarettes his entire life, and really abused himself. I'm amazed he's doing as well as he is. So I mean, he played drums not long ago. He did that Jack Bruce Memorial a month ago or something.
Yeah.
So he's back playing again. So that's good. I mean, I think he's fine. I mean, I think my dad's probably going to outlive everybody. You know, he'll probably be, you know, 300 years old and still going.
Which you know, we sort of hope for, because, you know, the music they've made was great, but Cream themselves, I think all the members, if you look at them in the media historically, weren't great conversationalists or great talkers. There was sort of that mystery about the whole band.
Well, that was the thing. It was about the music. It was like, if you look at bands today, you look at what the whole music thing is today, it's all about a visual entertainment thing. It's very visual, and it's very, you know, very worked out, and it's very, like, you know, clean and cookie cutter. Cream wasn't that. Cream was not about, you know, how they looked. They just three guys got on stage, you know, and just they were good musicians, and that's what it was about. It was about being a good musician and showing how good musicians can make music. And that's what I like, that concept, because I always play with the top guys, the top musicians I can find. And I always, make sure that my musicians are good enough to improvise and can really improvise. And that's what I really like about the whole Cream thing. And that's really what I'm trying to keep, that concept going, of the good musicianship, playing good music, rather than what's happening today, where it's all about, learn 3 chords and just, look good, bang your head, wear some outrageous clothes and get a dance act going or something. It just doesn't appeal to me at all. I mean, it drives me mad, actually. It's like, okay, it's great to go, watch a bunch of, hot women and hot guys prance about on stage, but let's have some music with it, or let me just hear some good musicianship. So
it's sort of all changed when Kiss came out there and made it all about the visual rather, and then everything since the 80s and then all that.
Right. Well, I mean, that was fine that they did that visual thing. I mean, that's it's kind of fun. I mean, but it should. I don't know how it got so big. I don't know why we lost the musicianship with it. I mean, Kiss weren't very good musicians. They were adequate, but they weren't like, the cream of the crop like Cream were. So, I mean, I just don't know why we lost that whole musicianship thing in the music business, but we seem to have lost it. It seemed to have popular music today is not normally that great musician-wise. It all tends to be the same kind of thing, especially in the pop music. The pop music today is awful. I mean, listen to it back in the 60s. It was great. I mean, you had people using different time signatures, different barring. It wasn't stuck to this 4/4 bar phrase, verse, chorus, middle 8, verse, chorus thing that everybody does today. I mean, even the Beatles, look at the stuff the Beatles were writing. They had some pretty poppy songs, but Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, She's So Heavy, I Want You, all that kind of stuff. It's like, it's got time changes in it, and it's interesting. It's musicians, some good musicianship in there, or some good writing. Nowadays everything is just like, it's 4 on the floor, all the way through the song, and it's just dumbed down to the point where it drives me mad. I go nuts with it, but anyway.
Yeah, and I shouldn't even get you started on auto-tuning, because that...
Yeah, don't get me started.
I mean, auto-tuning has destroyed it even further.
Right.
We will mention that in January you're heading off to Germany, and then you come back to the States for a couple of shows in February. I'm in Montreal, which is, of course, in Canada. Will we see you up here at any time?
I need to get onto that. I'm just going to be signing with a new agency, so that might happen soon. Because I was there with Uli, I think, a couple of years ago. I think we hit Montreal. I mean, maybe we did. I don't remember. We got into Canada, but so I need to get back to Canada. I haven't been there for 2 years. Not in the winter though. I want to do Canada in the summer.
Yeah. Come in July. That's the best place. And I do know the folks that run a place called the Brass Monkey in Ottawa, and we can get you in there anytime. It's a great venue. Uli is actually going to be. Uli is playing there March 10th, so you should show up and come and give the Cream experience to the Canadian folks. But this is a great pleasure, by the way. Thank you.
It was fun.
Thank you for your time, and we'll keep our fingers crossed for the great Ohm reunion tour.
Okay, yes, that'd be great.
Wouldn't that be great?
All right.
Thank you, Kofi. Great pleasure.
All right, thank you.
Cheers now. Bye-bye.
And there you have it, folks, my interview with the great Kofi Baker. Make sure to check out Kofi Baker's Cream Experience, and also while you're checking out stuff, check me out on Twitter at Mitch Lafon, Instagram, Facebook, and of course, talkingmetal.com for all my interviews. And if you care to support the podcast, it is paypal.me/Mitch Lafon. And with that, I bid you a fond, fond farewell. Au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, bye for now. Oh my.